Welcome, everybody. This morning, it's morning here, we'll be talking about Gate 15 and Gene Key 15. Before I start, your invitation to check out below. There's a few links. You can download a visualization around creating your boundaries from your heart energetically, as well as I'm creating a free workshop that's called Magic Activations. You can sign up for that also below, and you'll get notified when I begin running those. Thanks so much for showing up and joining me. All of your comments mean a lot to me, and everything that you share in the comments. So thank you so much for engaging with me in this place. I love talking about these archetypes. I think they are so important to our own personal evolution. And even though they are collective archetypes, because we are individual sparks of source, there is each of us has a different element. It plays out for us differently. So it's super cool to hear what your experience is with these, and I appreciate you hearing mine. So Gate 15, we're going to start on the human design side and move to the gene key side. In quantum human design, Gate 15 is known as the Gate of Compassion. And in traditional human design, it's known as the Gate of Extremes. This gate is in the G center, and it's connected to the sacral via Gate 5. And it is collective logical circuitry. This is calling us to find our own rhythm, to, instead of finding patterns, habits, practicing into what feels right for you and allowing flow instead of needing to create very structured daily habits. There is a huge benefit in daily habits and or self-judgment, because we eventually can't stick to them because they don't feel right. This gate is also all about interrupting the patterns of life. It's like there's always going to be some type of disruption that happens in consistency. On the shadow aspect of this, we see self-judgments on your unique flow. People who have this gate are going to have more of a lesson on really tapping into their own unique flow, and may experience extremes in their habits that aren't productive at the end of the day. And you may also find this playing out by trying to force your natural waves of creation, of rest, into practices that you're conditioned or that society believes or defines as success. And this, at the end of the day, just denies what feels right and true for you. On the full expression of Gate 15, we're looking at trusting your own flow and rhythm, and to trust that you have your own cycles, just like the seasons. And there will be parts in these cycles that interrupt old patterns, because we are constantly here to grow and change. So it's a calling for us to see ourselves as nature, because we are of nature, and to see our own rhythms and flow. I notice this a lot. For about 7 years, I practiced yoga 6 days, 5 to 6 mornings a week. Like 5 a.m., I would be up even earlier to practice pranayama. And this was very good for me. It was very beneficial for me to support my body and the anxiety I was experiencing most of my life. And then my life shifted, and I kept trying to put my Ashtanga practice back into my mornings, and it just didn't work. And so then my practice turned into sun salutations. All I did was sun salutations. And then it turned into just sitting and meditating. And now it's turned into, I found a new form of exercise that feels very meditative for me, that I'm now doing again 5 to 6 mornings a week. And instead of doing it at 5 a.m., I sometimes do it at 8 a.m. So it's like, and I had to really work with finding what works for me. It wasn't this easy, or not easy, but simple transition of one to the other. There was this like ebbing and flowing and seeing what still worked and what doesn't. And now there's a new rhythm there for me in that morning practice for myself. On the Gene Key side, this is flowering expansion. And on the shadow, we have what Richard calls dullness. The gift is magnetism, and the Siddhi. And dullness is an interesting word because it's like dull, it's not shining. There's nothing shining. And dullness in itself is still, right? There's nothing sparkling off of it. There's, you look at someone's shining eyes, you can see them sparkling. When someone has dull eyes, they're very flat. So it's a kind of this flat way of being. And dullness is created through a repeating rhythm that never changes. This rhythm that just goes on and on and on and on and on, and it stays the same. And what makes dullness is really your attitude and perception of that rhythm, because what can be dull to one is not that way to another. Richard Rudd talks about animals in his write-up of this in his Gene Keys book. And, I watch my cat all day long, and she goes from playing 1 minute to just lying there. And you can see that she's in this, what we might call meditative state. I sometimes think that she's just in another existence, another world, she's tapping into things that are unseen to us most of the time. And so someone might see that as dull, depending on their perception of it, and someone might see that as very relaxing. Dullness can be expressed as emptiness, and we see this in our world when we see people who reach this like depressed state. They've given up on life, and what happens in that is that it's a freeze response in the nervous system. And we see a lot of that these days. Sometimes we think of freeze in the nervous system as just this not moving, but it's almost like this zombie-like energy of just moving through the world and going through the motions. Because our nervous systems are so taxed, and because this generation and a bit the previous generation and this current generation coming up, there's been this huge opening towards awareness of trauma. And through that awareness of trauma, we're no longer pushing through. And so our bodies are actually feeling the collective trauma, feeling our ancestral traumas, feeling our own traumas. And if we don't know how to support our nervous system as we are processing these things, because we're all processing so many emotions and energies and senses and feelings for the collective, right? We don't just process our own. We're so connected that someone who's experiencing something on one side of the world, you could very well be sensing into that and processing it. You just don't know whether it's yours or not. And so that emptiness is this real calling to support, like to offer support, to support ourselves, to recognize that that is a freeze response in the body. And it happens because there's fear to move. There's a fear of moving, and then there's also a fear of being still. And so it's just like, what do you even do in that place? And then on the other side, there's the extremist who is in denial and uses escapism to run away or push away this feeling of stillness. So as we move to the gift of magnetism, It's calling us to slow down. Our minds move super quick. They want answers right away, immediately. And according to human design, right, the big teaching in human design is we're all designed to wait. We're designed to wait to see what shows up in our environment. No matter whether you're responding or you're waiting for an invitation or you're waiting for the moon, and even manifestors need to wait for the inspiration to come through them, right? So we're being called to wait, just like the earth does. The earth moves at this pace that is very natural to her. And the more we slow down, the more we access the gift of magnetism. So magnetism is really related to the Schumann resonance. And if you ever watch the Schumann resonance, it's been pretty wild lately, and it's been pretty wild over the last 3 years with massive spikes. And there are some schools of thought that are saying that and this resonates with me, because the Schumann resonance keeps this energetic, and I'm not going to explain it perfectly, this energetic wavelength of the Earth's frequency. And what's been happening, it was at 7.8 megahertz for a very long, very, very long time since they started measuring it, up until I think more than 3 years ago, but we started seeing massive spikes about 3 years ago. And it just did something very wild the other day. And I don't pretend to know what all of it means, but one thing that really resonates with me is that as humanity wakes up, we are also impacting the resonance of the earth. And so the earth is also a living being. And as our frequency raises, the frequency of the earth raises. We are very interconnected and interwoven in how we interact with the earth, and how we influence the earth and how the earth influences us on an energetic standpoint. And so this gift of magnetism is calling us to connect to the natural ebb and flow of nature, life, cycles, and ourself, and find a physical steadiness and trust in whatever is unfolding. And to see that there is no difference between the magical and the mundane. In fact, the magical is in the mundane. The mundane is the magical. Just because something might seem boring or like it's steady for a while, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no magic there, right? We see this happen a lot in winter time, right? People start to get restless. It's like, oh, we've been in this winter for so long. And it's a sense of, right? Our minds are always looking for something to do, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. What do I need to do? And it's kind of a bit of a paradox as I'm feeling into this now, because while there's this natural ebb and flow of life, often there is a time when we are really, and it's in the ebbing that we recognize that this is a time to be there, to settle into that, and know and hold that that will shift at another point, right? My cat doesn't lie there and go into whatever state she goes. I watch her sometimes and she'll lie there for an hour, and then to trust that at the right moment we're going to pop out of that. And that brings us into the Siddhi of Florescence, which is this spontaneous and unpredictable flowering all at once. And this can't be controlled, and it does not come from the mind. It is this internal sense of what is and what wants to be called forth and expressed through us. So my guide said, it's about moving with what is, to become and merge into the spaces and places and things that are all around you, to dance with the existence of life, and to sense and feel yourself as one with it. This is challenging to do, right? Because so much of our conditioning is we're separate from nature. But in essence, we are all of that. That is all of us. So they continue to say, to know that you too will be still and you will have times of activity, times where nothing seems to be moving. This is your winter, and it's time to find comfort here, to sit and observe self and your surroundings. And this again is one of the challenging things for humans, because so much of our conditioning is grow, 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 grow. But nothing can grow. Like you look to nature, and in our current reality that we all collectively experience, and how the earth is also presenting herself, there are cycles. She does not constantly grow. There is death and rebirth, and death and rebirth. And so my guides continue to say, take care in the winter and play in the stillness like the deer or the cat, right? There's something like when I watch my cat in that still place, there's a difference between sleep and there's a difference when she's elsewhere. And when she's elsewhere, the sense I get from her is it's a level of giving self over to what is, and there's a playful aspect to it, or maybe not playful, but like this curious aspect to that. And in curiosity is playfulness. And the guides continue to go on and say, watch and feel yourself be consumed by what is. Allow what is to consume you. Allow it to penetrate you. Allow it to merge with you. Allow yourself to merge with it. Because in these places, this is where we find the truth of what is. Thank you so much for watching. If you can remember, the links are below. And if you'd like to share, like, or subscribe, that would be much appreciated. Bye-bye.